Hello, my name's Julian Edgar and I'd like to talk to you today about my book Custom Air Suspension. Now I know what you're thinking, air suspension, that's for people who want to make their car go really low, dump it into the weeds, or go really high and leap off the ground, things like that. But this book's about none of those things. This book's about people who want their car to ride and handle really well. Now, air suspension can achieve both of those outcomes. And if you doubt me, have a think about these names: Porsche, Mercedes, Audi, Tesla, BMW. All of those manufacturers use air suspension on their top line cars. Why? Because they can achieve outstanding ride and outstanding handling by using air. Let's have a look at those two ideas. Why would ride be better on air? Well, there's two main reasons. The first is that air suspension has what's called a rising rate. It gets stiffer as you compress it, but it's a lovely curve of increase in that rate. You go over a big bump, you don't bottom out. You go over a small bump, you barely feel it. Another reason that the ride is very good is because when a big load is in the car, 4 people get into the car, or you put a lot of material in the boot or trunk, the car does not sink on its springs. Well, it does for a little while, but then the system pumps it back up, and so you have the same ride height irrespective of load. That means you've always got the same amount of compression available in your suspension irrespective of how much load you're actually carrying. You don't hit the bump stops. Hitting the bump stops is not good for ride, and it's certainly not good for handling. Handling's also improved because you can change the ride height deliberately if you want to. For example, as you go faster, you can decrease the ride height of the car, a lower centre of gravity, better handling. You can even make it so that those things occur automatically. Porsche decreased the ride height of their car at about 70 miles an hour, 120 kilometres an hour, and then they decrease it again as you go faster beyond that. One of the things that people often find confusing about air suspension are the different types of air springs. And to get those good ride and handling outcomes, you really have to select the right type of spring. A lot of people who have seen air springs have seen the donuts, the convoluted bags, but no manufacturer uses those as the primary springing on their air suspension cars. Why? Because they do not give the results that the manufacturers want. They're cheap, they're easier to fit, but they don't actually achieve the ride and handling outcomes that you or I would actually want in their road car. Instead, and I'll cover this in the book, I recommend using rolling lobe airbags, rolling lip airbags that work in a quite different way. They're more like a piston in a cylinder, but the rubber lip rolls as the piston moves up and down. These give you longer travel. These give you a rising rate, which is more appropriate to ride and handling. They're generally very, very good springs. Makers like Firestone produce these sorts of springs. The other thing, after you've selected the right type of springs, air springs, is that you can take advantage of the fact that manufacturers have released so many cars that are fitted with air suspension. How? Well, you can take some of the parts from those cars at a salvage yard. For example, in the book I cover fitting a complete air suspension system to my car, a little Honda. I use a BMW X5 compressor. Why not? It's a great compressor. It's quiet. It has a little dryer to dry the air as it's being drawn in. It's about half the price second-hand of an aftermarket compressor. Why not use them? I also use a Porsche Cayenne air receiver, the air volume, the tank. It's aluminium, it's lightweight, it's rated for the pressure, and again it's quite cheap because most people don't use them. They're used only to replace those broken in accidents and things of that sort. You have the power to improve the ride and the handling of your car by making really good decisions in terms of the use of air suspension. It will not be as simple as just putting in new steel springs. It's a more complex system. It's a more complex system to set up, but it has massive advantages. If you have a lightweight car, those advantages become even stronger because the change in load as people get in and out makes up a greater proportion of the weight. But even if you have a large car, having the ability to hold a constant ride height, having the ability, if you wish, to lower the car at speed, has major, major advantages. And here's another one that you probably weren't aware of. Most people aren't. Not only can you change the ride height of the car, you can also change spring stiffness on the go. So, you can lower your car at speed and you can stiffen the suspension at the same time. By linking springs, you can even change the roll stiffness. On my little car, which is a front-wheel drive, I changed the rear roll stiffness by putting a solenoid in a link between the two springs. Open the solenoid, it's softer in roll. Close the solenoid just by flicking a switch, it's stiffer in roll. And I use that to soften roll stiffness on wet roads, to give better handling, better grip in those conditions. Air suspension is absolutely fascinating. It's a whole new world compared with steel springs. It's a whole new world in what can be achieved in terms of compared with steel springs. And it's also something completely within the capability of a competent car modifier. Move away from that idea of donut bags and dumping it into the weeds and start thinking about the incredible advantages that air suspension can give your car in ride and handling. And I think you'll find this a really, really interesting book. I had great fun writing it. I had great fun fitting the air suspension to my car and testing and developing it, measuring its performance. And I think you also will find it really, really interesting. Thank you.